Was that something at that point, like right after the accident, that you were considering or thinking about how it would affect your ability to work again?
No, not at all in the beginning. The funny thing was, like, I couldn't wait to pick up a camera as quick as possible.
Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast.
Hi, I'm Ilvy Njiokiktjien and this is Canon Shutter Stories, a podcast where we speak to photographers, content creators and filmmakers with incredible stories. In today's episode, we're speaking to an extreme sports, lifestyle and outdoor adventure photographer who suffered an injury that changed his life and his photography style forever. As we talk about regularly on this podcast, photography is a passion many people from different walks of life share. On this episode, we are talking about adventure and extreme sports photography. What does it take to capture kiteboarders and windsurfers in choppy conditions? And today I'm joined by a fellow Dutch photographer, Ydwer van Heide, who can help us answer just that. Ydwer, thanks so much for joining us on Shutter Stories.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So how are you? How's your day looking?
I'm pretty well, to be honest. It's a pretty nice weather outside, and it's actually not too cold for a Dutch winter. It almost feels like spring.
It feels like it. I was happy to see that this morning. Yeah.
Exactly.
So could you tell us about your photography? What do you like to shoot?
So I'm an adventure photographer, mainly focused on water sports, and I'm very specialized in kite surfing. Very dynamic sport and very exciting to capture. So yeah, that's my specialty.
Kite surfing. Okay, I've tried it once. I thought it was very cool. To me, it seems like one of the most impossible sports to photograph, but we're going to learn all about that.
It has like a really big wow factor, and if you see the kite surfers jumping from the beach, it looks insanely high and very extreme. It's always a pleasure to capture that right moment.
Yeah, exactly. It must be super thrilling. It's already thrilling to look at without a camera. Like when I'm at the beach and I see them jumping around, you can feel it in your heart because it starts to race, you know?
Yeah, well, it's very nice to bring that emotion across, I would say.
Yes.
And that's what I really like about kite surf photography. Is as I said, it's very dynamic, and there's a lot of action going on, and it's always nice to capture that moment of action.
Yeah, I can imagine. Must be a great thrill. So you were into surfing before you started photographing extreme sports, weren't you? Can you tell a little bit about that?
I started kite surfing in 2003. That's where I really got hooked. And in the meantime, I started photography as well. I remember I was working at a graphic design agency, and that was a temporary job. And at some point, my boss said, "Why don't you take my camera and start shooting a couple of projects that we did?"
Sounds like a good boss.
Yeah, very nice boss. He was the boss. So I took out that camera and started shooting those projects. But on the side, in the weekends, I had a good friend who was like a really good kite surfer, and I started shooting him as well. And that was the first moment that I started shooting kite surfing. I was, to be honest, a pretty good kite surfer myself, but I fell in love with like capturing those moments. And from that point, it didn't really matter if I was kite surfing myself or if I took photos. I almost got the same feeling out of it. So that's basically how it started with kite surf photography.
Wow, that's amazing. I can imagine that your friends were very happy because they were getting all the cool shots from you, I can imagine.
Well, I wasn't good straight away, to be honest. So the first photos must have been crap. So I don't know if they were too happy. No, to be honest, I think they were really happy because there was a lot of passion involved. Passion for the sport, but also passion for photography. And my friend, he kind of started learning to ride in front of the camera because it's actually not that easy. So it was a very cool learning curve from both sides.
What do you mean by ride in front of the camera? Like close to the beach or?
Basically, with kitesurf photography, there's a lot of communication involved between the athlete and the photographer. There's a lot of different ways. But for example, if you shoot from the water, half a meter difference in the takeoff of the trick that the kite surfer does makes a huge difference. And also the angle you capture the action or the moment you trigger make huge differences. And if you can explain to the athlete that they have to like twist their body a little bit more or have to take off half a meter later or more upwind or more downwind, those things are essential to, in the end, capture a great shot. And if you understand kite surfing yourself as well, and if you know what it takes to make those changes, that's where the difference is. And you have to communicate with the athlete to get that across, basically. So it's actually not that easy.
No, well, it also doesn't look easy to me. I mean, kite surfing all in all was very difficult. I tried it. And then, I mean, doing photography of kite surfing, I mean, looking at your images, I can tell that's a very, very difficult task. What I also saw when I looked through your portfolio is that you have a very unique style. Like, I can almost imagine, even by looking at your pictures and having seen others, that I might even be able to pick yours out. They have something that makes them unique. Can you describe your style a bit?
Well, I heard that a lot, that people can actually pick my photos out of a million because of a certain style. And like, it's hard to describe my style because I think there's different elements that speak for my photos. It can either be very in the moment, so very close to the action, or what I really like is to take photos of kite surfing in a scenery, and if you would take out the kite surfer, it would still be a very nice photo that people would hang on the wall. That's always been a goal for me. That's maybe one of the biggest unique things in my photography, I think. What helps a lot is that I know the sport really well. So I can anticipate on what's coming. And because of that, I can just get that little foreground or get the kite surfer exactly in that spot where I want it to be. So it is a very nice composition. And I think those things are very important in my photography. And I always have the intention to go a little bit further than maybe somebody else would go. And that means in certain conditions, I probably start taking photos where other people like, maybe it's time to put my camera in my bag. That's where I start. And I also create this relationship with the athletes. So I know what they're capable of, and I know how to push them to go again and again and again. So there's a lot of repeating to get that perfect moment. Yeah. Refining that moment till you have the perfect shot. Yeah. And I think that's very typical for my photography.
Yeah. Well, I really love your photographs. It's funny, I work as a documentary photographer myself, and I was thinking, will there be any parallels, with the work you do? And I thought, well, maybe not so many, because yours is more about speed and fast, and documentary photography is slow. But the things that you just mentioned are so much the same. I think what makes my style kind of uniquely my style is the fact that I know when I work on a story where the protagonist will probably walk in the upcoming minute. I know where they're going. I know their story. I know what they're doing. So I know how to anticipate that and when to click, basically.
Yeah. Sometimes I compare it with being a sniper. I think I would be a very good sniper.
Yes, me too, probably. It's horrible to say, but true. Yeah,
It's almost the same as hunting, I would almost say. Yeah. It's just hunting in a better way.
Yeah, totally.
and also, you're talking about documentary photography. I mean, there's a lot of situations where my work turns into documentary photography because I travel a lot, or I used to travel a lot, to a lot of different locations where situations aren't most of the time the easiest. And then it's more about documenting the whole trip and the whole travel story.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of like documentary style, travel style photography involved as well.
Yeah. I guess with publication, that's also what they would want to see as well, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They want to see the full story.
So today we're also going to talk about your accident. But Before we kind of do that, I would love to know what some of your favorite images were that you had taken before that day of the accident. And it's always difficult to describe images, but please take us through so we can see them in our minds.
Oh, sure. That's a very hard question because there's so many images that have a certain meaning to me. And sometimes it's not even the most perfect photo, but it's more the story around it and the way we created it that are more important. But there's definitely a few photos. I remember one photo in Brazil where we were shooting for a kitesurf movie, and we were on this little lagoon, and it was sunset. The sun was almost gone, and there was this perfect scenery where a kitesurfer was doing a jump on the lagoon with the sun in the background and some nice little palm trees that turned out to be little silhouettes. And there were kids playing on the beach. And I saw this moment, and I had my 400 millimeter lens on my camera. So the only thing I could do to get that moment was to run as fast as I could with that heavy lens on my shoulder as far away as possible, because I was way too close for using a 400 millimeter.
Yeah.
And just at the right moment, I was putting my camera on my tripod, and I got the shot, and I shot it in a way where I shot multiple photos so I could stitch it. And it turned out to be the most unique shot that we used for presenting that movie.
Wow.
And I think up till today, it's still one of my best photos that captures a really nice vibe that's very typical for Brazil.
Huh.
I think that's one of the photos that always stays on top of my mind. Maybe not even because it's the most insane action, but more because it has a certain feeling, I would say.
Exactly. And what I like about it is the fact that it was so unplanned. It was happening. I love those moments, especially in the end when they work out, because many of the times you see something happening, you have the wrong lens on, you're too close or too far, and the moment's gone, and you were very quick to respond and you got it. And that feeling is so good. It's yes, I saw it and I got it, amazing.
It is unplanned, but in some way it's actually not unplanned because we know our subject so well that we also know how to anticipate that quickly. So there's actually a lot of research involved before you're able to take that photo and respond so quickly. So you could say it's actually not so unplanned.
Maybe kind of unplanned and well prepared.
Yeah, the better you are prepared and the better you know your subject, the more luck you almost have, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So then everything changed in a very unlucky way, I would say, but maybe
yes,
better for you to explain what happened.
So I had this pretty insane, adventurous life, I would say, with traveling a lot and going to the most beautiful places and be surrounded by very nice, talented people that became really good friends. Yeah, it almost feels like a perfect life, I would say. I remember it was a pretty much a day like today. It was sunny, calm weather, and there were little waves. And I said to my girlfriend, okay, I'm gonna go for a little surf. So I went to the beach in my hometown. I live in Noordwijk, which is right on the beach. I can actually see the beach from my living room, but it was a very nice and calm sunny day, although it was in winter and it was pretty cold. But yeah, it was just, it felt like a harmless day. So I basically do all kinds of water sports, and it really depends on the conditions. Sometimes when there's wind, I go kite surfing. When there's just waves, I go surfing. But when there's small waves, as the day of the accident, I used to go out on my hydrofoil surfboard. It's a really nice way of surfing because you lift out from the water and you kind of flow over the water with almost no resistance, and it's a very nice feeling. And so I went for a surf. There were a couple of friends outside, so I paddled out, and at some point I took a wave, and that wave kind of changed my life because I fell off my board and it was pretty shallow, and I hit the ground. And I remember the feeling of all my power and energy was flowing away from my arms and my legs, and I couldn't move anymore. And I was laying down with my face in the water, and the only thing that I could think was like, don't pass out.
Oh, wow.
So I shake my head, do not pass out. And then I just saw like the sun rays coming through the water, and it was all very quiet. And the only thing I could do was hold my breath until one of my friends shouted my name, and I was like, okay, she actually saw me, so I just have to hold my breath a little bit longer. And then she turned me around, and I was really there in the moment, and I could really explain very clearly what happened, and that I couldn't move my arms and legs. And I said to her, I think it's good to get to the shore as quick as possible. And then her and her friend dragged me to the shore. And that's where all the people that were helping out were already there. And then I got to the hospital, and yeah, it all went very quickly. My girlfriend actually came to the beach when I was in the ambulance, and she was in shock. And the only thing I could say, like, it's gonna be okay, not really knowing what was going on.
What really shocks me in the story, I'm like almost can't breathe when you're telling it, is the fact that you were totally there. Like, you didn't pass out, you were there
the whole time. Yeah.
That's very...
I don't think I hit the ground very hard. I just hit it very unlucky.
Yes. Yeah. Very.
So yeah, then it just went very quickly in the hospital. I got surgery. I broke my neck. The funny thing is, like, nobody actually ever said to me, you have a spinal cord injury, or you're paralyzed, or you're not able to walk anymore. Nobody actually ever said that to me. So I always had in my mind, it's gonna be okay. At some point, I'm gonna walk again. I'm gonna be able to do things again. I always kept that in my mind.
Why did no one say this?
I think it was also because my spinal cord injury is incomplete, and I think I have to explain a little bit what it all means. My injury is pretty high. It's for the people that know what it is, it's C6, C7 vertebra, which is pretty much from the waist down, and it's that high that it also infects your hands and arms.
Okay.
But it's incomplete, and that means it's not completely disconnected. There's certain signals that do go through.
Okay.
And it also means, like, things can come back at some point.
Okay. Wow.
So I think that's the reason why they never said to me, you're not able to walk anymore, or they just couldn't tell.
I see. So they were sure not to kind of discourage you, maybe also.
Exactly. Yeah, as soon as they tell you what the outcome is going to be, you kind of like live to that point.
Yes, I can imagine.
And maybe you were able to go way further.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't say it.
What were you feeling at that time in the first conversations with family, with doctors, right after this moment?
Yeah, I think I was like pretty in shock, and I had a lot of pain. The most important thing that I said to my girlfriend was that it was going to be okay, and you can, yeah, okay is a very big thing. Like, what is okay? But I think that was a very important. I was only looking forward. I wasn't looking backwards.
But you also sound like a person who does that, right? Like, you sound like a positive spirit.
I never thought that I would be that strong in being positive, but luckily I am.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I always I'm one of those persons that say, like, if this happens to me, it's over. And it's absolutely not over.
And it's not over.
So that's funny how that can change.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's actually really beautiful.
Yeah, but like it's also a very big contrast if you look at my life before and after, it's a huge contrast. So like if you know that up front, a lot of people would say like, I don't want this anymore.
I can imagine right after the accident, you think of family, of your girlfriend, of how your injuries affect that part of your life. But us being photographers, I can also imagine you started thinking about your career right away. It's so intertwined with who we are, right? We are photographers. It's not something you do. Was that something at that point, like right after the accident, that you were considering or thinking about how it would affect your ability to work again?
No, not at all in the beginning. The funny thing was like I couldn't wait to pick up a camera as quick as possible. So when I was in rehab, I started shooting with my iPad that I would just have on my laps, and I would just shoot everything that I thought was interesting. So I started shooting like as quick as possible again, and maybe it was not in the way I was used to take photos, but I always like had in my mind, okay, now it's like this, but tomorrow it can be completely different. And that's still something that I have in my mind.
Yeah, because how many months is this ago?
This is 2 years ago. Yeah, which is, it sounds long, but it's for a spinal cord injury, it's not long at all.
No, I can imagine.
Because everything goes very slowly.
How did the people around you react? The photography community, your friends and family?
So I built up quite a big name within the kitesurf community, and the reactions from the kitesurf community was insane. I mean, I had like so many messages. I did not know that I would have such a big impact. And although everything I do it because I want to do it. I do it because I am who I am, and this is just like what feels for me like what I have to do. But apparently there's so many people inspired about what I do, which is great. It's beautiful that people get inspired by that so much. That's a huge bonus.
Yeah, that probably gives you energy too.
Yeah, but in my opinion, I just do what I would do.
Yeah, you do what you do and it inspires others, and
that's amazing.
How beautiful is that? And that they share that with you as well.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's been overwhelming, the messages and all that stuff. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a lot coming your way. So how has the whole accident changed your outlook, or has it changed your outlook on your perspective on life?
Yeah, I think quite a bit. Like it sounds all very cliche, but you appreciate small things way more. I mean, life is a massive challenge and you need to adapt a lot. But that's what I meant, like life before the accident and life after the accident is actually not that different. You just have to put it in a different perspective. Before the accident, I had a very adventurous life and I had to adjust to a lot of different situations. And now, if I go outside in my wheelchair, it almost feels like a big adventure. And I think because I learned to adjust in so many different situations, it's almost easier for me now to adjust to this situation as well. Although sometimes it's just really difficult. The thrill and the adventure, the feeling of that adventure is actually quite nice.
You said when I go outside in my wheelchair, it feels like an adventure.
Yeah, you get many obstacles like on the pavement, on like little uphills, like all those little things. Like I take my little camera with me a lot when I go in my wheelchair outside just to take photos. You come across a lot of difficult obstacles, and it's like one big adventure, and it's right in front of my doorstep, basically.
Yeah, I can imagine. It must be a whole new life. Kind of feels like the way you were speaking about surfing before, like kind of surfing and hitting waves. This kind of seems the same, the way you talk about going in your wheelchair,
it is the same.
Going outside. Yeah, it reminds me of that.
It's not the same, but the feeling is exactly the same.
Huh.
And I remember in the rehab where you like learn to become independent again. So you learn to dress yourself. And I remember that I gave my therapist a high five after I was able to put on my own sock. I'm like, really? So yeah, it is absolutely the same feeling you get.
So what has this rehabilitation journey kind of been like? Are you still in that process?
So basically, you are in rehab for 6 months, and the goal to achieve during rehab is to become as independent as possible, and then you go home. Funny enough, it's like getting your driver license. You get till a certain level, and then you get your license, and then you actually start learning how to drive. Well, it's the same here. Like you come home, and then actually you learn way more than you learned in rehab. So I'm not in rehab anymore, but I will always be in contact with the rehab. So if there's something that will change, I can call them and they will help me out. So yeah. Yeah.
That's a safe feeling, I can imagine. Yeah. So you said you picked up your iPad really quickly again, but when did you pick up your real camera again?
Yeah, it was actually not that long after I started shooting with the iPad. My girlfriend, she brought my camera to the rehab, which was the Canon 1D X Mark III. And it was funny when my hands don't work, but when I picked it up, I can still use my hands in a certain way. It felt so normal that I'm like, geez, this is actually a very good ergonomic body. If it still feels so good, like it still felt like a piece of my own, but I wasn't able to trigger the button because I couldn't.
You couldn't push it, so you could hold it. Like the weight of the camera you could hold.
Yeah, and it felt really good. I even have a photo of it where I hold the camera, and it felt like, okay, there's gonna be more possible than I think there is.
Wow. But then when you couldn't
exactly
press the shutter, what did you feel? Because maybe you didn't know that before lifting the camera, or did you? It
was pretty annoying, to be honest, and maybe a little bit frustrating as well. But then I quickly changed that in like, how can I make it work? So you start playing with like, I don't know what you call them, like little frog eyes you can stick on it. So you have a little bit more leverage to push down, those kind of things. You find different ways to use your hand to maybe like push down the button. And then I remember that at some point I was at home and I started shooting kite-surfing for the first time with my friend from my hometown here. And I have this little, I would almost say like a little tank where I can go on the beach.
With like big wheels? What do you mean by a tank?
Yeah, like, I don't know, like how it's like a proper little tank basically.
Huh.
With big wheels, so I can go literally everywhere. And I was super excited. It was pretty strong wind, and it was nice weather. And my friend was going out, who is pretty good, so it was definitely gonna be good action. And my girlfriend was going with me, and I thought I would just do it. And that didn't go too well, although the result was pretty good. And then I think that's also because I know the sport, I know how to anticipate, but the feeling, like, it didn't feel like before. I couldn't like run up and down the beach, find that little foreground, etc. And at some point I got my camera on a monopod, and the little thing on the button was gone, and I couldn't really press the buttons anymore. So in the end, I ended up like just like try to like follow the kite surfer, and my girlfriend would push the button.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty confronting moment, I would say, for me.
Yes, I can imagine.
I'm like, okay, how am I gonna solve this? So yeah, then you like, okay, how to tackle this? And then I came across this article online about a skydive photographer who had his camera mounted on his helmet, and on his visor he drew the frame so he knew what would be in the photo. And then he had this little wire that would go from the camera to his mouth, and if you bite on it, it triggers the shutter.
Huh.
I was like, this is the solution.
This is it.
So I bought it straight away, and I have one that where you can bite on and one that you can trigger with your tongue. And it's insane. Like suddenly I have both hands to hold the camera. I don't have to think about pressing the button anymore. And it's the solution.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Pretty good.
And totally coincidental that you were reading
Actually, yes.
this story, right? Or were you looking for it?
No, I wasn't looking for it. I came across the photographer on an article on the Red Bull website, and I was like, "This is my solution," and it works great.
You are looking through the viewfinder.
I'm looking.
I'm
through
guessing.
So
or
I
which camera are you using now?
Yeah, so I decided to use a lighter camera, which is the 5D Mark IV. I had both cameras, so I decided to go for the lighter camera, and the quality is insane. So with that on a monopod, so I can like rest on the monopod, and then with both hands, I can kind of like aim on the subject, and then I use my tongue to trigger, and it works great. I'm still not able to get in like those little positions, and I'm still not that fast sometimes, but because I know the sport so well, I can get really good results. And I also started looking a little bit different at photography. So my style of photography changed a lot after the accident, and it's way more.
I was curious about that.
Like
it must have.
I don't really care so much about a perfect outcome anymore. It's way more emotion involved and way more in the moment. And although I always try to capture speed, I think before my accident I always tried to freeze it, and now I'm way more intrigued by capturing moment and movement in maybe longer shutter speeds, really show that speed in a different way. And maybe it's because I'm not that quick anymore, and this is how I want to show that motion.
That's very interesting. Also because I always feel with adventure sports or sports images that have movement in it, I always feel the sport more.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's more emotion or connection to me in those kinds of images. So it's interesting how you made a switch.
Yeah, I think it's also because I did a lot of commercial shooting back in the day, and it was always like very brand focused and product focused. So the product had to be in the shot, had to be visible, and nobody's telling me now what to do. Like I'm on a complete free journey, and I can explore whatever I want, and it's a very, very nice feeling, to be honest. Yeah, and that's maybe something I also like started missing in my photography a little bit as well. So I think that's a very, very beautiful thing to experience.
Something positive that really came from this.
100%. Well, there's many positive things that came from this, to be honest.
Yeah, can you name, I'm curious, what other?
Well, during my rehab, I actually started on one of my biggest dream projects that I had for a while already, but I just didn't have the time to do it, and never. I mean, I was like traveling so much. I think I was like 2 months a year I was at home. But this project I started during my rehab, and it was creating a photo book, which I always wanted to do. And now I had the feeling I had the time for it. So my girlfriend started bringing my computer and all my hard drives to the rehab, which is a lot. And in the beginning, I couldn't even navigate through my files. I needed help from her. She needed to plug in my hard drives. I was only able to sit on my computer for maybe 10 minutes. And then I was tired. And it was a very nice process because like over time, I felt stronger and I could sit longer on the computer. I was able to sometimes plug in my own hard drives and navigate. And I went through all my photos from my whole career as a kitesurf photographer, which is like over 15 years of footage.
Wow, that's a lot to go through. That's an immense task.
Yeah, and I made a huge selection of photos. And I think that was also a moment where I started looking different at my photography, and a lot of photos that I selected for a book were photos that I never selected before.
Yeah.
And that's also where the title of the book came from, which is Unseen.
They were really the unseen images that were living on your hard drives and now came to life.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of photos that are in the book are unseen and unpublished photos that I never selected before and that were living on my hard drive and needed a place to be seen.
Beautiful.
And it was a very beautiful process as well. On one side, reliving a lot of beautiful moments that I had and realize what amazing places I've visited and how many opportunities I got, and also like how many people I met on the way and how many of those people became really good friends. And on the other side, it was a very beautiful process to get into some kind of like workflow again. I started using my computer again. I started editing photos again. I completely did the layout for the book myself. I designed the logo. I rebuilt my website, everything. And that's, I think, a huge achievement. And it got me in like a really good work rhythm again. So all those things, like I think this project was like a huge value for me.
I think with a book like that, usually when you make a book, I made a book in 2019 and I remember going through the images, but between making the images and selecting them, I don't feel I changed that much. And you had a huge life-changing moment in between. And I'm pretty sure that must have changed the way you were selecting, like you said. I mean, it must have made the book so much more in depth to what you might have made if the accident would not have happened.
Yeah, totally.
Crazy thought.
Exactly. Like it's some photos, like people would never thought that I would have such photos in my archive.
Yeah, they didn't even know you from that perspective, I guess. And you didn't know it, maybe.
And I didn't even know. Or maybe at that point, it wasn't really interesting for me. Or I would say like, well, this photo didn't really work out. But now for the book, it perfectly worked out. There's like little snippets in the book with little text or little stories. And it's all handwritten on my iPad with a pen.
It really sounds beautiful. People should really check it out because I saw some of the images of the book. I of course saw the pictures on your Instagram of the book launch as well, and it's really beautiful.
So we had a big book launch in Cape Town. Cape Town is a place where I used to go a lot in winter, in European winter, because the whole kitesurfing industry is going there for training, for photo shoots, for events, for just like it's a big network for the whole kitesurfing industry.
I figured you lived there at one stage, or maybe you didn't.
Almost. You could almost say that we lived there because it was like 6 months here, 6 months there.
Yeah. Wow.
Basically.
Perfect.
6 months traveling through Europe and the rest of the world and 6 months in Cape Town.
Okay, great.
So you could almost say we lived there, yeah. We spent a lot of time there. But that's where I had my book launch, and it was a very special moment with a lot of emotion as well. But the book is available on my website, so if you want to have a look, that's the place.
It looks so beautiful. I'm really happy. I'm really happy for you that you got to make that, and also the way it helped you in your rehabilitation. So, what would you say is next for you in your life, in your journey as a photographer?
Yeah, so the book was one thing, but there's so many things happening. I literally, I have this rolling shutter Instagram where I post a lot of new work that I shoot at the moment, which is not kite related at all, but to me, and I think maybe to a lot of other people, is very interesting photography. Maybe that's cool to check it out. But another really nice project is something that I've been working on with a friend who also helped me with the book a lot, is a creative agency. I'm a big fan of sharing my experience that I gained throughout the years to fellow photographers or upcoming talent. And kitesurfing is a very nice industry, but from the creator side, it's still very unprofessional, I would say. And I think it'd be nice to make this side more professional and support the other photographers and videographers as well. So we basically created a creative agency within the kitesurfing industry, and we have a couple of videographers and photographers that work for us, and we help them and we support them within the kitesurfing industry, which is a very nice project. And it's called Amongst Friends, amongstfriends.agency, which will go live today. So yeah, like photography is a big thing in my life, and water sports as well. And I can't take that away from my life. I would take away some of my personality as well. So yeah, I will just find ways to be involved somehow.
Well, it sounds like nothing stops you. Like literally, I know you will find ways. And it also really sounds like you are the kind of person with such a positive outtake on life, but also, I mean, we've only been talking for about an hour now, but the general feeling I'm getting is that nothing's gonna stop you. You're just gonna keep going, launching a website, making a book. Yeah, I'm very inspired by our chat today. I'm very thankful that you also shared so much.
That's very cool. Yeah. Although it's not easy, and some days are absolutely difficult and horrible, and sometimes I say to myself, those days are the easy days, because it's very easy to say tomorrow is going to be better. But the things that I'm doing now, I would never have done without the accident, and I'm very grateful for them. I mean, it's only 2 years ago, and of course, sometimes I wish I would be able to go back to my old life, but I would also know that will never happen. And the only way to deal with that is looking forward and just enjoy the challenge that I have and create something nice out of it.
Well, you really are. It's really inspirational to hear you talk and to kind of hear your strength as well. Thanks so much for sharing all that you did.
Thanks a lot for having me.
If you want to find out more about Ydwer, you can get more information on his website, ydwer.com, which is ydwer.com. And thanks for joining us this time on Shutter Stories, a podcast by Canon. We'll be back again next month for another episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to get involved with all our social channels in the description of this episode. We'd also love to hear your feedback, so don't forget to give us a big 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and share the episode with all your friends and fellow creators. See you next time.
Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast.